Yeah, so Master Sergeant Shane Polk, been in the military for 16 years now, currently the ALS Commandant. Absolutely love my job. Prior to that, original AFSC is Body Environment Engineer, originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yeah. Go Tigers.
Well, Technical Sergeant Larry Portwood. I come from San Antonio, Texas, air traffic controller by trade, the NCOIC of air traffic control training here at my current duty location right now. And I've only been in for 17 years, so that's about it.
Okay, so first question. How has Black history progressed or evolved in the Air Force since you've been in?
So Black history is American history. It's not a segment where we should look at it as the greatest hits or something like that, where we pick out the bits and pieces and only look at February as that month of, hey, let's only do it for this particular month and forget about it the rest of the time. Looking at from where we came to where we are today, from the slaves to civil rights leaders to our literature writers, actors, sports athletes, it has changed and it has made America who we are today. And I think Black history and knowing about Black history is being a true American patriot at the end of the day, because that's just American history in general. So
I agree with everything you said, 100%. It is American history. It shouldn't be just like bits and pieces, or particular month, particular time of the year, just to check a box per se. It is American history. Yes, there are some things within the history that is painful and all that stuff, but it's all about progress. It's not so much of where obviously we need to pay homage to where we was at one point in time, but it's like more of the evolution of where everything is going right now. And I think that is definitely what's important. I got friends that stew on it and become militant about Black History Month, and I look at it more along the lines of, don't get me wrong, I enjoy America, love America, and all that other good stuff, but my thoughts of America is more where we're going to be, where we're going to end up, not so much sit in the past all the time, That's my perspective when it comes to Black History Month, and I think the evolution of the Air Force, I wouldn't say there's more onus on it, more importance on it. I think it's just more looked at it more in a broader lens, wider lens, to be accepted as American history in itself.
Do you feel like there were any instances in your career that made you feel that there was a racial disconnect with the people you worked with?
Yeah, lots of instances, but more specifically, just in a general sense, like Master Sergeant Polk mentioned earlier, you walk into a room or you walk into a commander's call, you walk into an auditorium, a briefing, ALS class, whatever, it's pretty abundantly clear that, you might be the only dark-skinned person in there, but, and I think on one hand, it's like, you can take it and look at it from your perspective of like, oh, I'm trying to protect myself, self-preservation, you make those key notices of it, but then again, I also can't sit there and think for other people. Like, I don't know if anybody's harboring any negativity toward me because of the color of my skin, so therefore I shouldn't automatically assume the worst in people. So I know that was a growing thing for myself, is to accept that that's the demographic, unfortunately. That's just how it is. I just roll with it. I'm no less and no more than anybody else, so it doesn't really bother me right now, but I think in my younger days, I think it did affect me at one point in time, but now I'm not too much worried about it.
I wouldn't add any more to it. I think you hit those points when you walk into a room, being in 16 years, being the only African American in the room, you notice it right away, and you take it and you go with it. It's a sense of pride, and don't look at it as I'm less than. You want to look at it as I'm equal as everyone else. So.
Next question. Have you encountered any stereotypes in your career, and how do you feel minorities are treated in the Air Force?
Yes, I have encountered many of the stereotypes. I think that my experiences may or may not be any different than, I would say, everybody for that matters. There's stereotypes about all peoples from different, whether it be religions, cultures, all that other stuff. I think all of us, regardless if you're the one doing the stereotyping or you're the one that's, the stereotype is being placed on you or the perception is being placed on you, I think we all experience it. I think just a few times that I had to check myself is that to not fall into those stereotypes was just, being the angry Black man in the facility. I look at it more as like self-preservation. I'm not gonna let nobody bully me, push me around, get over on me or whatever. So if my supervisor wasn't standing up for me, I had to do it. So, but then, me standing up for myself, what I would think is standing up for myself their perception is like, oh, they just discount like everything that you talk about or you said, or the injustice against you, like, oh, you just angry because you're from the east side of San Antonio, that's just how they roll out there, or whatever. So I mean, I've dealt with that. I mean, I don't pretty much too much deal with that nowadays because, the Air Force has a zero tolerance policy on it. So the way I look at it is, Air Force say zero tolerance, I'm zero tolerance also. So I don't think I see that now, but I'm definitely in my younger days, we talk about the progression of everything. I mean, but we're in a whole different time now, so it's all good.
Do you feel like you were able to stay true to your culture, or do you think being in the military changed your culture?
I mean, I feel I can stay true to my culture. I'm from Louisiana, I'm from the South. You can probably hear my accent through it, but I've been away, and that's just one of the things that I'm not going to change, is trying to fit the mold of a particular set agenda or something along those lines. It's who I am, and that's really how it comes down to just be the best version of yourself and keep it moving from that point. So
I look at it more as like a 50-50. There was obviously, as a young man, young Thundercat, 18 years old, there's negative stuff that I was probably doing or putting on the parents with negative stuff. So then I had to like eventually, I wouldn't say evolve per se, but it's more along the lines of, if you know for a fact that you're like, whatever you're doing can be viewed as in a negative light, to an extent. Now, you're essentially taking that branch off of you and then essentially regrowing it to be something more positive. Now, obviously, being in the Air Force, you got to eventually just adopt to, the core values, kind of like segue it into your life, kind of embody those values and stuff like that. So I don't think that it was any different than what I was already doing. Basically stay true to yourself, don't lie, don't steal. You can still like have your own personality, you can still have your own accent and stuff like that. I mean, that is who you are. I think other than just be more polished, I guess. Or even then, that's more maturity than anything.
yeah, absolutely. That comes with time.
Exactly.
Progressing and just being the best version of yourself at the end of the day.
What is one thing you would tell your younger self right now?
Me personally, I would probably say, be you. Don't try to fit the mold. I used to walk into the room and say, hey, I'm the only African American in the room. Maybe I need to try to be like this or like that. No, be who you are. Don't change. Be your authentic self. And I think it has worked out really good for me in my Air Force career. It's just to be who you are. Don't try to act like this particular person, that particular person. Just be Sergeant Polk from Louisiana. That's all you can do.
And I think that everything that you said, I would agree with that too. I think the only thing I would add to my younger self is I would probably take the advice of all the mentors. Take a more proactive approach in following through with their advice, I would say. Because, I would hear all their advice like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing that, or invest your money, save your money. I think situations would have been totally different, not only for where I'm at now in life, and also, set the family up better, back when I was a younger person.
Just to piggyback off that question, what would your younger self think of you as a person right now?
Yeah, I think my younger self would look at it and say, you have grown. You have went through your challenges. You have went through your obstacles in life. And I'm not going to say you've made it, but the Air Force has opened up many doors for me. It's been an eye-opening experience. I've been overseas to places that I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be, living in Yokota, Japan, staying there for 4 years. That younger version would be very proud of where I'm at today.
I think my younger self wouldn't recognize me, honestly, because my younger self, I was not the model airman, even back in my younger days. And then I think joining the Air Force was so far removed from my mind, to the point to where I'm proud of my older self, but I honestly don't think that there's no way in my wildest dreams. It's almost like a dream still. I would not imagine I still will be here, doing air traffic, and Utah for that matter.
Get all emotional. Okay, so according to the Department of Defense article published by the Secretary of the Air Force Public Affairs in December of 2020, there are findings that racial disparities do in fact exist in the application of the military justice. Why do you feel like that is a difficult conversation, and why it's not talked about more openly?
I would definitely say it's going to continue being a difficult conversation until we rip the Band-Aid off and absolutely get comfortable talking about American history once again. It comes down to why do we have to tiptoe our way into different things is some people are raised not around African Americans and don't know how to deal with that dynamic. You're looking at people that have been told one thing in their life and they take that and move forward with it and say that all are like this. And what you see on TV and those other things is not what the typical African Americans like are and those type of things. Not to say that it's put in a bad light or anything like that, but we're just being honest and having transparency. I mean, when you look at it on TV, it's just a different world. And they take that and they bring that perception. When we look at military justice, is if I haven't dealt with this type of person or situation, I'm going to treat them differently. And that's a sad way to look at it, but it's one thing that we need to change. And I mean, we have the facts from the 2020 survey that it's happening. So we need to address it and face it head on.
I feel it's a difficult conversation and or a topic because it will be so many levels of people that you have to call out. That essentially has gone wrong for so long, you know, like maybe back in the days, nobody was wanting to entertain the conversation, or they'd be like, oh, I don't know, just make random excuses for everybody, you know. And now that they have the data, you know, of saying like, yeah, people are getting, you know, minorities or African Americans or whatever are getting punished harder, more severely, you know, as a study even says, is pretty alarming. Honestly, it is. But I think it's just like I said, a hard conversation, just because nobody wants to talk about it, and everybody's scared to. Well, now ain't nobody scared to talk about it because we're trying to, in the interest of moving forward, getting better, you know. I think now that is getting more entertaining as far as like basically let's fix it, you know. Everybody's in fix it mode. Like I wouldn't say I don't think the Air Force is trying to be social justice or like champions of social justice per se, but at the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong, you know. And I think we want to make sure we're on the right side of history and making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, not only from the supervisor level to advising the commanders and the first sergeants and all that other stuff. So I look forward to it.
The next question, what advice would you give to a young airman struggling with their identity in the Air Force?
That's difficult. I mean, if you find yourself struggling with your identity, with your culture, those type of things, you're good enough. No one is better than you. Like I go back to earlier, be the best version of yourself and let that be the dynamic that plays out. Don't give anyone an excuse to count you out, to tell you that you're not good enough, that you don't belong, because you do belong. And be yourself at the end of the day. And yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's really as simple as that. Is just be yourself, and you are good enough, and you don't have to try to overdo it to make up for something that you think isn't there. So
I think the only thing I would add is just like take a look at who you are, what you're trying to do, and try to marry that up with your end goals. I would say, like legit, if aspects of you and or your culture is straight negative, you know, bad news bears, you know, disparaging somebody else or whatever the case may be, then it's probably doesn't job up with the Air Force way of life, honestly. So you might want to either A, don't join in the first place, or B, just learn, just evolve yourself, you know what I'm saying? You know, keep all the positive stuff, get rid of all the negative stuff. I mean, that's literally our evolution, you know, when it comes to culture and growth and all that stuff. It's like knock off all the negative stuff and keep the good stuff. I mean, you can still stay true to who you are and keep in touch with like what you used to back home, your folks, the traditions and stuff like that. But like I said, just really evaluate it to see if it's negative, stop it. That's easy. If it's positive, keep it going. And worst case scenario, if you're struggling with your identity, reach out to other people that might want to, you know, like-minded individuals that want to, I don't know, get down with the culture with you, you know, whatever your said culture might be, you know, like, you know, in Texas we all about barbecuing and stuff like that. So, you know, yeah, that's one thing I would add to it. It's like, get rid of the negative stuff, keep the positive stuff.
If you were in charge for a day, what would be your first order of business?
Like we literally had a conversation earlier, and we were discussing about the blocks, about marking white, black, Asian, all these type of things. is that really necessary? Is that really a point for us to go out and segregate ourselves and say, hey, I'm going to separate myself by doing this and doing that, and what's the overall point of that? And another piece that I would look at is, I understand we have 28 days to focus on Black history. Going back to earlier, it's American history. Why do we have to separate and say, oh, only during this time is going to be Black history? We need to incorporate Black history into the entire 365. It's not just a 28 days, let's put it on a snapshot, then March 1st, okay, scoot it to the side, let's move on to something else.
Right.
Yeah, just take a look at, is Black History Month really needed? And add more Black history into our everyday lives and just how we, go about life in general. So those would be the two things I would change, is the racial block and the actual focus on Black history just for 28 days.
I think I would just try to help the educational system to the extent of like we mentioned earlier, is like why does essentially African history, Black history, why does it have to start, with this transatlantic slave trade per se? If we learn about everybody else's culture, I would throw in some good stuff from the great African continent and all other countries and stuff that comes out of that. Or I think that's what I would do. Just kind of put it on everybody's forefront, because I don't mind learning about the ancient Chinese, the ancient Japanese, the ancient Europeans. History is history.
Any closing remarks, Sergeant Polk?
Yeah, so overall, I just want to say thank you for having us. First of all, you guys are killing the game and just out here just making it happen for your organization, and all of you guys are just leading and making it happen. But when we're looking at innovation and starting from the beginning of earlier when we talked about I was walking to the room being the only African American in the room, but now when we look around, we look at Chief of Staff of the Air Force, we look at Secretary of Defense, we look at the wing commander for Hill Air Force Base. Things are changing and things are happening. So at the end of the day, you're going to hear it again. Be your authentic self, be who you are, and be the best version of yourself.